r/AskReddit. Soldiers of Reddit who have faced child soldiers in combat, what has been your, or your comrades', experiences? Any unique challenges you or others have faced? There was a kid sitting on an overpass in Iraq, dropping Molotov cocktails trying to make it into the gunner's hatch of all them wraps in our convoy. 50 calories. Gunner saw him and cut him in half. He was probably 10 years old or so. My buddy said that kids would often run up to the convoy trucks in Iraq and some of the guys would give them candy, even though they weren't supposed to. On one such occasion, a kid tossed 2 live grenades into the truck. One of the grenades was quickly tossed away to explode without issue, the other was not as easy to get rid of and ended up amongst the group of kids. The guys giving out candy were put on cleanup duty. No idea what the approximate age of the children was and not many other details. It was pretty rare to get him drunk enough and in a mood to talk about any of it. My platoon sergeant was on his 3rd tour when he joined our unit heading to the sandbox. I'll probably never forget the time he just dropped in casual conversation, in a joking manner, "You can take home a lot of things from your time in service, but I'd rather not have been the first guy in my neighborhood with 3 confirmed kills." And he just kept talking from there like he didn't want to give anyone else a chance to question what he just said. It worked. I never asked. End of our tour. Nothing really happened the whole time. He got comfortable enough with us to tell some stories from his past tours. One of them involved meeting a 13-year-old Iraqi boy awkwardly trying to carry an RPG in the suburbs of Baghdad, and the sergeant just up and running at the kid, screaming at the top of his lungs, firing his weapon as fast as he could in the air, scaring the kid enough for him to drop the RPG and run. I never saw his file to see if he had a bronze or silver star, but I think he earned something that day. Kid was likely just being used as a mule to bring gear and ammo to insurgents, so he wasn't likely a threat himself, but he could have been shot for carrying a weapon by someone too quick on the trigger. Sergeant intervened, but chasing someone through the streets is likely to get you isolated and shot, so he had no idea what happened to the kid. My old roommate never really talked about his time in Iraq, but we were hanging out getting unreasonably drunk one night and he told me about killing a kid. He was so upset about it. But what are you supposed to do when they're shooting at you? My heart breaks for him. He's had a rough life in a lot of ways. The last time I saw him was when I invited him out to grab a couple drinks for his birthday. He said yeah, he might have some other plans to get to but he wanted to hang out anyway. We sat around drinking and smoking and his phone didn't go off once. We stayed until the bar closed. He's very much a loner and really tends to push people away, but I try to reach out occasionally so he knows someone cares. Edit for whoever cares, I did reach out again. My ex was British Royal Marines, and fought child soldiers. This was 10+ years before I met him, but he had horrible nightmares and on a couple of occasions broke down crying, while drunk. He never told me everything in a coherent, start-to-finish way, but from what I've pieced together he killed 1, or more, child soldiers, protecting his unit. It catapulted him into self-loathing. He got awarded a medal for it, refused to accept it, but was forced to attend the ceremony with members of the royal family. Only got through it by drinking himself into a stupor and then spent the next 4 to 5 years with a serious coke habit before being able to transition into more moderate alcoholism. So yay. I was deployed in Afghanistan from 2009 to 2010 and again in 2012 with the US Army. Due to the nature of my deployments, the first one was much more kinetic and that's where most of my personal encounters with the enemy happened. A lot of the people we fought were teenagers, probably from 16 to 19 years old. So some of them were children by the US definition. But over there people grow up a lot faster. Everyone I dealt with was trying to kill me, so I don't feel any remorse about shooting back at them or dropping mortar rounds on them. I never had to deal with younger kids being a threat or anything like that, thankfully. And honestly, myself and everyone I knew generally really liked the little kids over there. They were usually sweet and nice, and always asked for candy and gum and stuff like that. And even when those little shits would throw rocks at our trucks it was hard to blame them, not much else to do for fun around there. I knew a guy who served and we got drunk one night and I was the idiot who asked, "What's the worst thing you saw while serving over there?" He got quiet and got this far away look in his eyes and then he told me this story. I was in an armored convoy and we were in the middle of a patrol but it had been a pretty normal day. The school buses that were used were pretty much just minivans so the only way to identify it was a school bus was usually the sticker they placed on the side. Anyways, the area we were in was known for placing copper on top of their bombs because when a bomb ignites the copper liquefies and basically goes through anything. Even our tanks can't block that shit. So we're on patrol and a bomb goes off about 10 feet to our right and I figured I was a dead man. Right then a school bus drove by and provided cover from the blast, so only one of our soldiers was hurt but not seriously. However, that school bus was blown to hell. Most of the kids died, but the worst part was the driver of the school bus survived, who was a middle-aged woman. But her legs and arms had been blown away from the blast, so we had to drive her to the nearest hospital. I'll never forget her screams, especially because she had to sit under my legs since we had no room. She screamed and screamed. But mostly I won't forget the arms and legs of the children that had been destroyed from that blast. It will haunt me forever. I was with the SADF back in Angola. My platoon and I had few brushes with the MPLA. We mostly met poorly trained militias armed with old Soviet gear. But I remember on one occasion, we were entering a village where we were supposed to get water. The village, if we can even call it that, had around 10 to 15 actual houses, and of those at least half were abandoned. I remember that our spotter yelled out to us, telling us to get prepared. Our lieutenant saw something that visibly shocked him and called out our sergeant. We received the order to issue warning shots south of our position. That's when we all saw it. Around 30 to 40 kids with guns bigger than them, with a few adults who seemed to be their COS. Our sergeant ordered us to target the officers, and we did. Even after all 6 of their adults were killed, the kids still continued to shoot, with no control of their fire. After maybe 5 minutes the order came, fire at will. I don't remember if the entire platoon opened fire. I remember I did. In the moment, I didn't quite think about who I was shooting. I don't think anyone did. All we saw was an enemy eager to send us home in body bags. We saw enemy uniforms, nothing else. Nobody said anything afterwards. My comrades probably all willingly forgot this or justified it by saying something like us or them. It's very easy to analyze the situation if you weren't there. But when you're in the moment, you forget that the ones on the other side are just like you. So to sum it all up, I opened fire without thinking too hard about it. Don't know if I regret it, I just know I don't like remembering. Not really the same thing, but this question reminded me of something I read in Stars and Stripes while I was deployed. Some army unit was doing daily patrols through some shithole town I can't remember the name of. They did this patrol every day and the locals got to know them pretty well and didn't seem to mind. And the kids in town would run alongside the convoy and beg for candy. A bunch of soldiers started tossing them stuff from their MREs. It was a hearts and minds type thing, I guess. Anyway, one day while on this routine patrol and I'd ripped through the convoy while it was stopped and a bunch of kids were gathered around. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think like maybe 4 soldiers were either killed or wounded and something like 20 or more kids were killed. I know it was a pretty high number, and the first thing I thought was, goddamn, this village just lost like 20% of the kids that live there. I wasn't on this convoy and I don't know anyone who was, but I had been on the same sort of mission dozens of times and could easily place myself there. I saw kids get killed by insurgents and allies, but I never saw a mass casualty situation involving little kids like this. Not me, but a fraternity brother and close friend who passed away told me a story once about his second deployment in the Middle East. He was an Army Ranger, Army Special Ops, and was a breacher/first one in during all breaches because he had balls of steel and insane reflexes. He told me that he killed a kid once who couldn't have been more than 14 years old. He said the action wasn't what haunted him, he said it was how it happened. He was leading the team through an alleyway to a door that led to a suspected illegal weapons cache, and he held his breaching shotgun up to the door and gave count, and as soon as he was about to breach, the door swung open and a kid leaned out through the door with an AK-47 pointed outward. So he blasted the kid in the face with the breacher shotgun, and he said the look of surprise on the kid's face was what bothered him, a mix of surprise and inevitability of his doom. There's no running from a fucking shotgun blast to the face. There's no. Not me, but an NCO I used to work with when I was in the Air Force a few years back. Note, our career field was COMSO 99/100ths. When someone with our job went to the sandbox, we sat in an air-conditioned bunker the entire 6-month or 365-day deployment. However, on very rare occasions we could be trained and qualified to ride with Army or Marine convoys since they didn't always have the personnel trained for their comm equipment. The NCO I used to work with was one of those guys. He told me a time on his second deployment to Afghanistan, he took a ride with an Army EID patrol to the nearby city to check on a possible EID tip. During their patrol, they came across one and stopped for the EID guys to do what they do. While they were stopped, they set up in the typical defensive formation and all the Army guys set up a perimeter around the parked Humvees. My NCO, being Air Force and being the only comm guy there, chilled in his passenger seat but still had his M4 at the ready and, as he put it, grateful he did. Usually for stopped patrols like this, it wasn't uncommon for some of the locals to form a crowd just to see what was going on. Well, during this commotion, a kid, he said no younger than 10, no older than 15, managed to avoid the sights of all the other soldiers, and climbed up onto the hood of my NCO's Humvee. When the kid stood up on the hood, my NCO could see he had an AK slung over his shoulders resting on his lower back. All in the span of a few seconds, the kid tried to pull the AK around his waist but was met with 2 shots to the chest from my NCO's M4. Now I don't know how factual this story is, as I wasn't there. However, this NCO I know, was one of the greatest guys I had the pleasure to serve with and is still a very close friend of mine today, years after serving together. Edit, figured I'd add, my NCO buddy has finally started seeing a therapist about a year ago for PTSD. He is doing very well, has a very loving family, and a successful military career. He doesn't regret what he had to do, but he wishes every day he hadn't been put in that situation to begin with.
I'd love it if you liked and subscribed.